Well, hello, Chad Schimmel back with you from Turner's Warehouse. And today we are making this Purple Pearl Abalone Pen. Now this is on a black cigar using one of our Purple Pearl ghost color blanks that we make. And we are going to do most of this on the lathe. So we're going to jump right in. And what we are going to do is first drill out the blank. Now, I've cut these on a bandsaw. However, you could load them in your chuck and cut them with a handsaw right here on the lathe. But since I have a bandsaw, I did that. Now, you will need a chuck. I'm using the SC2 with the pen jaws here. And I'm using the Record Power Herald lathe and a drill chuck holding my 10mm drill bit. And I'm just advancing the drill slowly into here. I've sped up the video a little bit, but this is turning about 900 RPMs, the lathe. I'm used to the drill press. The lathe is turning about 900 RPMs, and you just slowly advance it. You want to pull your drill bit out and clear it off fairly often. You don't want to build up a lot of material in there, like that was too much, because you will build up heat. You'll pack in the chips and the shavings, but more importantly, you'll build up heat and you'll start to melt and warp that tube, and you'll get an out around tube, and it'll just not work out well for you. So drilling on the lathe is incredibly efficient and easy once you have all the tools, and you get a real nice perfect hole every time, or at least as far as I can tell every time. So there again, I'm doing the other half of the cigar pen here, the upper half. And I'm just advancing, retracting, clearing the dust and the chips, and that's it. So that's an easy way to drill on a lathe. And you can do that with any pen kit as long as you have the right drill bit. And I am using, like I said, the SC2 with the pen jaws. I'm using a double set of jaws because I happen to have two. You only need the one set with the two jaws. Now, here's a little something. We're going to be turning between centers. I somehow lost my video of gluing in the tube, so hopefully you know how to do that. If not, hit me up. But a cigar pen has 4 bushings. It has 2 bigger parts, which are the 2 centers, and then 2 narrower bushings, which are the ends. And I like to go through and line up all my bushings on my parts to make sure that I have it all correct before I start turning, because there's nothing worse than turning it down and realizing you had a part backwards, or you had the lower barrel on the upper barrel bushings, or so on and so forth. Now, TBC, what does that mean? It means turning between centers. So here I have a live center on the tailstock and a dead center on the headstock. And all those are 60-degree points, which match the 60-degree points on the bushings. Now, the bushings are specific to the pen kit, so you're going to want to get the bushings to match whatever kit you're turning. With this setup, I'm using the Herald lathe again, which you're probably sick of seeing the Herald in my videos. I'm using my Easy Wood tools. I'm going to start off with the detailer with, the finisher with the Negative Rake. And I don't need the Negative Rake on this Alumilite blank, but it sure makes it easy. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. But turning between centers, you turn one barrel at a time. And to me, it's a much better quality. It's usually more precise. You don't have out of round issues that you do with regular bushings on a mandrel. You can't over tighten it and bend your mandrel, which is a nice thing, especially if you're new. So although there is some additional expense and setup, once you have it, it's really easy. Now, if you watch my videos, especially in the summer, you know that it's hot and crazy here. So I've got all my fans running and swamp coolers. That's why my shavings are going everywhere, because there's like 3 fans pointed at me and a swamp cooler overhead. So ideally, it's not the best situation, but in order to stay cool enough to work and still be crazy hot, that's what I got to do. So my shavings are going every which way, but it's best if you have a dust collector or something that you can suck them right down out of the way, but mine is not reaching over here. So anyway, I'm using my finisher with the Negative Rake just to shape this barrel. I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to get it real close before I do my sanding. And with the finisher, I can go fairly quickly, even though it's a round insert. And with the Negative Rake, I really don't have to worry about any gouges, any chipping, anything like that, because it's very, very smooth. You can see those chips just kind of, actually they're not even chips, they're ribbons And these ribbons get miles and miles long. So you know your tool is sharp and you know you're cutting well if these ribbons are continuous, because that means you're just cutting one single ribbon forever. And when you first start, you're going to get little chips because your blank isn't round. Once it's round and you're making good progress, your ribbons will go for miles. And they'll actually get annoying because they'll wrap around your lathe. So oftentimes you'll see me, when I don't have a dust collector on, I'll be grabbing the ribbons and pulling them off so that they don't all wrap around my blank. But this is real simple, easy turning. It's kind of nice to turn stuff like this because you're just following the shape. It's a tapered tube going from the center of the pen down to the tip. And so you have just a nice gradual taper, and it's really easy to cut. Once you're done, you can kind of see how it's going to look. And look at all those long ribbons. So I just got a little more here, just taken off to line up with the bushings. And this is, if you're new to pen turning, the bushings are really awesome because they allow you to line up to the pen parts perfectly. Boy, say that 5 times fast. Pen parts perfectly without measuring. You can always measure and turn between centers without any bushings, but this is a lot easier and it makes it really efficient. So there's my blank. That's how that one's going to look. And I can go to the upper. Man, that was quick. But I just load that up right between centers and I'm off to the races. Make sure my rest is in place. And you want this snug. You don't want to over tighten it to where you're putting so much pressure you crack your blank or anything. But you want it good and snug between the centers because that's what's driving your pen blank, is the pressure between the centers on the headstock. So you want to make sure you are snug, but don't get Hercules on it and try to crack it and that kind of thing. You just want it tight without going nuts. Now you can see right in the beginning there I had little tiny chips like shavings, about an inch long. And that was because my blank was not perfectly round. Once I've turned it just a couple of rotations, I'm going to start getting really long shavings from chips, and that's how you know that you're round. So there's some long strands that happen real fast. And those things, if you turn all day turning Alumilite, it'll look like a spider infestation at your shop because there'll be webs of these things. At least at my shop, with the wind blowing everywhere, there'll be webs of these all over the place, which is kind of cool in Halloween times, but not any other times. It's annoying. So definitely find a way to get those under control. Now I am showing you the full thing here kind of in live speed because a lot of times people think that I speed it up real fast or I don't show it all. So I'm trying to show the whole turning here. And I'm just kind of moving back and forth pretty casually. You can see I'm not going super fast, but it still only takes, a minute or two to shape this all the way down, as long as you're making nice, even, smooth cuts. And here I'm going to get rid of some of these shavings because they are out of control. And I just throw them in the trash can right there. So anyway, that was pretty simple for turning, I would say. And now my blanks are ready to be sanded and polished. Now the sanding and the polishing is the most important part to me because that's what makes it look good. So here I'm just cleaning up the lathe, getting all the dust and stuff off so it doesn't get in my water. And I've got a plastic tub with water in it. I'm still going to be doing between centers, although now I'm not using the bushings. So I'm just loading the pen barrel up on the centers, between the centers, without bushings. And I'm going to use 600 wet dry paper. And this is from Turner's Warehouse as well. We have 600, 800 packs. And I'm just using the 600 to do any final shaping if I need to take off a sharp edge or if I need to get a tool mark out if I dug a little deep or something. This is where I remove it. A lot of people start a lot lower in grit. I do not, because if you're turning with carbide and you're fairly smooth and even-handed, you're not going to have a lot of big gouges. So the 600 is about as low as I go on acrylic or resin of any type. Now, you'll see me run my fingers over it to make sure it's smooth, and that's why I do that. I'm going to use Zona once I'm happy with the 600, I'm going to use Zona, and it's 6 sheets going from green to white. And this is only going to polish it. Zona Paper is a polished paper. It's kind of like micro mesh, only it's not pads, it's just sheets. And I cut it into these little squares. And I always tell people in the store, if you have a groove or something you don't like, it's not going to take it out. It's just going to make it shinier. So make sure you do all your sanding and shaping with your tools and your sandpaper. Polished paper is just that. It's polishing, not sanding. So I'm going to move through the grits here fairly quickly. I'm going to spend the most time on the first one, the green one. And then I'm going to move through them. And it's fun because as you go through these, in a short amount of time, you can see the pen blank start to shine. Now, I know it's wet, but even so, you'll see it go from a dull to a shiny pretty quickly with these with these papers. So, Zona is my preferred method for polishing. If you're into wax or micro mesh, or we actually have a new product called Magic Juice, which is really good. You don't need to use any micro pads or papers, but you just go through the 6 steps. It works really well. But it's just new to me, so I still use Zona. But I have used that quite a bit and do like it. So I'm already on the pink here, which I think is the 3rd or 4th paper. And once you get into these later papers, you'll move fairly quickly because you're just really buffing and buffing and buffing with this stuff. It's really cool. So this blue one, I believe this is second to last. And the final one is white, which is 1 micron. I tend to spend a little extra time on the 1 micron, but not a lot. Now, these little squares that I cut off of the Zona sheets, I use these for probably 4 to 6 barrels. So I wouldn't say pens, like a 2-piece pen, I would use it twice, and then I replace it. Now, this is a cool product. This is our little ring bling. This is like a final step after you've used your polish pads or your micro mesh or your Zona paper. And this just cleans it and gives it a little extra shine, just a little bling. So 1 little drop is all you need. And you just want to make sure you go over the whole thing, coat it, wipe it off, and this little blank will be shining like a jewel. So that's all you need. It works out really well. And it doesn't take much, so that little bottle should last you a long time. If it doesn't, you're using too much. Because like you saw here, I just used 1 drop. And that's all it takes. So when you're happy with it, obviously you just pop it off the lathe, set it aside, and do your second barrel. Now, this, like I said, is a cigar. So this is the lower tube. It comes to a point. The upper tube is a little shorter and fatter. So we're just going to repeat all the steps for the same way for the upper tube. So you don't need to do anything different, and you'll be all set. So I didn't show that, but that's fine. Now I'm going to set out all my parts. Cigars, I like to lay everything out, get them out of the wrappers, and kind of line up my parts so that I know I've got the right things going. Because cigars have a definite direction and a definite shape, and the ends and the center could be easily flipped, and you wouldn't know it till you put them together. Now, with a cigar, like many pens, you do not want to press against the little threads. You can definitely break them. So I'm using these plastic sleeves that I got at the hardware store that I just cut down, and that covers my threads. So when I put these in here, you'll see me put the part in, and then you'll see me put this little plastic cover over it. And I recommend doing that. If you're not sure if you can press against the threads, don't press against the threads, no matter what the pen kit is. So that's the cover there. I've got 1 on each end. I'm using the Miles Craft pen press, so I just flip up the little toggles to make it the size I need and press it together. And this press works really well, and it's really stable. So that is the lower section. Those are my sleeves. And now we can put this together. I like to put the tip on first, put the ink in, make sure the spring is loaded correctly and the ink moves, and then put the transmission on. A cigar transmission presses into the cap, so you can activate it like this just to make sure it all works well. So set that aside and do the upper. The upper is super easy, no threads to deal with, so you don't need those sleeves. You want to make sure and put your accent ring on your center band. Now in this case it's all black, so it's not a huge thing to notice, but if it was a two-tone pen and you don't put it on, it's really noticeable. You just line everything up, put your clip where you want it. Now this had a cool little wishbone shape on the blank, so I wanted to avoid that. So I put the clip right behind it here. But you just line it up, load it up in the press, and press it down. The cap is the easiest part, so I like to do that second to make sure I don't mess up the first one when I'm assembling the lower. Again, put your toggles up on the press it together. You can always flip another toggle if you have more room. And that is it. So it's pretty easy to use the press. Now when you put these together, I like to line them up when the ink is in, and that way when I turn it, it's out. Or when I turn it, it's not the pattern. This pattern isn't really that big a deal if you didn't line it up because it's hard to tell, but it's a really cool looking pen. It's the Purple Pearl Abalone that we make here at Turner's Warehouse. So I made this because we're doing a cool 3-pack with the pens and the blanks. So here's the 3 pens, and they all have a cool, unique look, so it works out really well. Thanks for watching.